President John Dramani Mahama has submitted its comprehensive report on the 2023 Akosombo Dam spillage, outlining critical recommendations to enhance disaster response and provide relief to affected communities. The committee, which presented its findings on Wednesday, May 7, 2025, identified systemic gaps in flood mitigation and called for policy reforms to prevent future crises. The Volta River Authority initiated controlled spillage from the Akosombo and Bole dams between September 15 and October 30, 2023, due to rising water levels that threatened the dams' structural integrity. The spillage caused widespread flooding, displacing communities along the Volta River. An estimated 26,000 to 35,867 people were displaced, losing homes, belongings, and livelihoods. The most affected areas include Mepe, Bator, Sogakope, Mapfe, Adedome, Bong, and Adam. Now, President Mahama, upon his re-election, constituted a committee to investigate the disaster. During a national address to mark 120 days in office, President Mahama indicated compensation will be paid to the victims of the spillage.
We promise to initiate a probe into the VRA Akosombo Bole Dam spillage to address the man-made disaster caused by the VRA spillage and prevent future occurrences. We promise to initiate a probe and take steps to compensate the victims. So this administration set up a committee chaired by Engineer Kirk Coffie, a former VRA chief executive. The committee has recommended strategies to prevent future occurrences, including establishing what is called a controlled spill flood plan and implementing downstream engineering solutions for flood management. I've directed that the recommendations be implemented immediately. I further indicated that if they are not properly implemented and another destructive VRA flooding occurs like in 2023, the VRA CEO and deputies must resign or be sacked.
That's the president there. Now, the government is expected to release a detailed action plan based on the committee's findings, focusing on preventive policies and victim support. Let's get into a bit more of this. And Denis Wedam Esquire is with me in the studio. He's been studying the details of this report. Dennis, what do we know?
Well, Alfred, so this is a 5-member committee that was inaugurated on the 13th of March. 2 months to do its work. And I mean, typically, the deadline for the submission of this report was supposed to be May 12th. It's interesting to know that they've submitted their report ahead of time. Yes, and it's very comprehensive. We are talking about a 126-page report, which spans across all the things that have happened in that very unfortunate incident that we here at Media General covered extensively, because it was heartbreaking, even going to the extent of mobilizing funds to also support people who were displaced from their homes, support schools that were also displaced, and all that went into it. But all in all, yes, they were given certain terms of reference, which included to examine the events leading to the spillage of the dams, and that is Akosombo Dam and the Bole Dam, to assess the action taken in response to the situation. 3, to identify the challenges encountered during the process. 4, to evaluate strategies employed to address the impact of the spillage. 5, to propose additional measures to enhance future outcomes. And 6, to propose a compensation package for affected victims and communities. And this is very important because when you pay attention to the NDC, even before they got into power, this compensation and investigation of this matter were parts of the things that the government said they were going to do in the first 120 days. So when you look at the Mahama 120-day social contract with Ghanaians, it's included in that is the fact that they were going to put together a committee that will look into this matter and also take steps to compensate all those who have been affected. So that's how come you find that as part of the terms of the reference of the committee, Alfred. Now, the committee hit the ground running on the inauguration on March 13. They conducted site visits, going to the dams, engaging community leaders, and also conducting interviews with key stakeholders, including those who manage the dams and all the technical experts and engineers, all those within the operational area. They were all involved in this particular thing. The committee said they held meetings specifically with the following: the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, the Member of Parliament, and the former Volta Regional Minister. They also had meetings with the current and the former Chief Executive Officer of the VRA technical team, both of the Akosombo Dam, Akose Power Plants, chiefs, opinion leaders, and the persons who have been affected. And all of that you can find in the report. Alfred, the findings of this committee, as have been summarized, include one, that the factors that determine water spillage from the dam include the reservoir elevation, rainfall, and energy output from the power plants. This is to indicate that a mix of factors determine whether or not a dam should be spilled. Two, that the Akosombo Dam recorded a maximum water inflow of 477,984 cubic feet per second on September 18, 2023 at the Akosombo hydrometric station. And that historically, exercises have shown that in 1968, the volume was 5 times the volume spilled in 2023. So the figure that I mentioned a while ago, which is 477,984 cubic feet per second, that in 1968, the volume of water that was spilled was 5 times more than that number, that figure.
I see.
Indicating that there could be larger volumes of water spill in the future due to climate change uncertainties. And that is to establish the point that what we had seen to be devastating with that amount of water, it can actually be more. Because in 1968, it was 5 times more than that figure.
I see.
So they also indicated by way of findings that the examination of events leading to the spillage, the spillage was primarily caused by releasing approximately 800 MAF volume of water. That's
million acre feet.
Million acre feet volumes of water from the Akosombo Dam to prevent the dam's destruction overtopping due to high reservoir water levels. Other contributing factors included unprecedented rainfall due to climate change and human activities exacerbating flood risk. Breaching the dam could have resulted in a catastrophic chain of events in the country.
Right.
Findings number 6 is the fact that VRA's emergency preparedness plan specifies the rules and the responsibilities of all stakeholders, including the VRA, NADMO, district assemblies, securities agencies, etc., when an emergency occurs. The Emergency Preparedness Plan, that's the EPP, was used to manage the disaster caused by the spillage and was the most technical document to be understood by various non-technical stakeholders. While VRA had socialized the document with all stakeholders and conducted a simulation exercise for some selected communities before the spill, high turnout and divisions among some district chief executives, metropolitan chief executives, and members of parliament could have derailed clear communication lines for implementing the plan and distribution of the relief. This, in summary, means that yes, there are clear guidelines as to how to deal with this, but because there were some disagreements as to, amongst DCEs and other opinion leaders, it was difficult to implement this to the letter. They also found out that the response involved various government agencies, including the Volta River Authority and the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, that while there were efforts to provide immediate assistance, gaps in communication, resource allocation, and community engagement were identified. They continue by saying that the committee noted operational challenges such as a lack of local disaster preparedness plans and inadequate evacuation resources that hampered the emergency response process, communication breakdowns, and skepticism among community members regarding the information provided by authorities further complicated response efforts. There's also the issues that relate to community challenges, and that the committee also noted that the land tenure attachment by the people, economic reliance on location, fear of unpredictability, insufficient financial resources, and support from authorities, restricted housing options, historical precedent of spillage, and cultural resistance were factors that made most affected people unwilling to relocate during the spill event.
Right.
There's also the point they make about temporal accommodation, and that the committee noted with concern that some affected persons were still housed in tents at the mercy of the weather, refusing to relocate to temporary accommodation built by VRA. They cited a lack of privacy as families were required to share rooms. This was a disaster.
Indeed. And it's a very important point you make. And Dennis, I'm going to hold you on to that a bit because our guests would have to just go into a quick meeting from what we're hearing. Engineer Kirk Coffie, thankfully, is joining us on the telephone.
Right.
He's the chair of this 5-member investigative committee. I thank you so much, Engineer Kirk Coffie, for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Thank you for having me.
Now, hearing that this spillage, which lasted 46 days, discharging approximately 8 million acre-feet of water, is actually lesser than the historical data, which shows that somewhere in 1968, the spill was 5 times larger. What should we be thinking about doing now? I mean, to ensure that if this has to happen again, we would have learned the right lessons and put the right measures in place for the years ahead of us.
This is an excellent question. Let me thank you again for going through the executive summary of the report and especially the findings. Now, let me just start by thanking the President, Excellency Mahama, for giving us this assignment through the Ministry of Energy, because the answer to your question will see the vision in what that man was saying, that this thing should be done at this stage. Because for a dam, it has 3 main things. The dam is used to for flood control, power generation, irrigation, and potable water usage. And when you dam a river or whatever it is, the inflow comes mainly from rainfalls, and the rainfall from all on the dam itself or from the tributaries. So that when you get an inflow and you don't take out all, then the level keeps on going up. And there's a level to which the level can go to. In the case of Akosombo, it can only go up to 276. We have a surcharge where it can go to at most 278. Okay, and that's what it is. Anything above that, put the dam at risk. And when the dam collapses or you breach the dam, then everything downstream of that dam would vanish, would go with it. So your number one protection is the dam. So when you get inflow far more than you can contain, and that's why you have the spillway gates, which have been designed to take out the maximum that can come in based on historical data. So in the case of this, having recorded that level in 68, when we feel 66, 67, 68, 68 was the maximum. And that was 5 times more than what we spilled. In 2020, we did the volume, total volume, quantity of water spilled was 8 MEF. 68 was about 42 or 43 MEF. So that's how come you get it about the 5 times. Okay. Even 69 spillage, we spilled 69, we spilled in 70, 71, 72, and then 74. Then after that, we never spilled till 1991. From 1991, we spilled again in 2010 to 2023. I'm just giving this in to have an idea of how the lake operates in a way.
Indeed.
The water lake, even though it's big, you get inflow at some times, and then you use the water, then get finished, and then go through a cycle like we've been experiencing. And I'm sure you've been in Ghana where we went to the minimum level of 230, below 235 in 2007.
Yes, indeed.
And within 3 years, it rained, the rainfall was so that we were able to go from the minimum in 2007 to the maximum in 2010. And we're still in 2010.
Yeah.
Now, 2010 we failed. Then we went to another cycle where by 2017 we went close to the minimum again. We went to the minimum again, 235 in 2017. So from 2017 to 2023, inflow came again and went up to the maximum of where we have to spill in 2023. Even though we have been taking close to the maximum we can take from the lake in terms of water generation.
Right.
So, as the dam is, if you don't take enough, you break the dam, and then everything goes. So, as a result of what we've done, and based on the findings we found out, what you can do to prevent, having recorded some level of spillage in 1968, seeing a little bit more, a little bit less in 2023. And with all this climate change we keep on seeing everywhere, it tells us to start planning that one day we could hit that big mark. So that what we do now, our recommendation is to plan for a flood zone downstream of Akosombo, where if we have to spill, the maximum volume we can spill, which we call 1 in 50-year volumes, which would be about 37% more than what we spilled in 2023. We are prepared and we should be able to do that. So that's our recommendation. There will be a flood zone which will be dedicated, where we don't expect anybody to stay there or have any permanent structure there. You can go farm there and leave, or go fish there and leave, but no permanent structure should be built there. And by the EPP, all these areas will be done. Luckily, VRA, after this incident, have also done some work. So there's an app where if they tell you X amount is going to be spilled, you can, at every location, a WhatsApp application should be there where people can see where the water can go and where it cannot go. So we are planning for the 1 in 50 years spillage for the short to medium term. And for the long term, we are planning for 1 in 100 years.
Right.
Which will be about a bit more, about twice or 1.5 times the one in the 50 years. So we're planning for this for the future.
Okay.
So that should it happen, we should be in the position. Because your number one protection is the dam.
Precisely. And you don't want to breach.
This is what, if for anything at all, this report has identified this, and we have to make sure that we have the flood zones well protected. We need an airline for downstream. An airline to be prepared so that the district assemblies, whoever has to do these things, have the mandate and they can do it properly.
You see, I was coming to that because the ultimate objective, you say, is not to breach the integrity of the dam, and then you reference the emergency preparedness plan as for you what should outline what the way forward will be like. But then again, this VRS EPP outlines stakeholder roles, but there were challenges because of the poor coordination amongst the DCs, MPs, and local leaders. So how should that be addressed?
Well, we noticed that, and that's something that we have also given guidelines where it has to be addressed in our report, where there's been poor and frequent coordination. The document that has come out, the visa-friendly EPP, the EPP should be discussed more frequently. There should be more drills. There was a drill in May 2023, and then the spill came. We would have just been wondering what would have happened if there was no drill. Previous all the drills or something were just on next stop. But this one was actual drill involving everybody. And probably that's how they were able to handle this challenge in 2023 without any casualty. So having identified these things, DRA together with all the stakeholders will make sure, and I'm just through the ministry, make sure that there's proper collaboration among all the stakeholders to make sure that they understand what has to be done and is done properly. Because the district assemblies have a role. They also have to have their own disaster management teams, well educated and understanding what to do. And at any time, and they should be in direct contact with VRA as to when any water is beyond the normal operation is coming downstream, which will have an impact, and the role they have to play. So they have to be educated properly, well resourced as well, and almost all the stakeholders. Now, areas that will be impacted, of course, will be marked out properly. We know some areas, the bridge is there, and the substations, hospitals. All these things are more being lined out properly so that areas that will be impacted would be properly taken care of. Now, in the case of the reason, what we noticed was that if you go to a place like Mepi, a lot of the areas which were flooded were not very close to the river banks. Okay? Because they are which go through the town. These are like rivers or streams through the town. So because the water level went up, the water went backwards into this area, and that's how the flood came into those areas inside the town. So that a place 1 kilometer from the township, from the river, got flooded. So these are areas that we think an engineering solution can be provided. So that in future, I mean, there could be gates, there could be dikes and gates. So whenever there's any flooding, those gates are shut, and then no water can flow backwards into the township. So there will be some engineering solution, which I believe VRA should be thinking of right now, that can be put in place.
And finally, before I let you go, on the matter of the community resistance to relocation as well, because as you indicated already, there's been some damage. The thousands who have been displaced and those who are still in tents. But then if you would have to go back to, as it were, ensure that the persons within the catchment area have to relocate, what has to be done differently to get them to appreciate, understand, and relocate?
I think there's a saying which says, once bitten, twice shy. I've been saying it because over the years, as I said, the spillage over the years, besides 1968, has not been to even this magnitude. After 1968, which was high. 2010 was not that much. 1991 was not that much. So people living in some of these areas have never witnessed the level of inundation or flooding like they did in 2023. So right now, they are prepared, and they will be prepared. But of course, if government comes in and you are being relocated, I think going around, we didn't have the thinking that they would not. It's come to understand that, of course, they have to. They can go back to some of these areas and fish, okay, because they know during time that they could go there and fish. But not to put down any, how do you call it?
Right. Structures.
Structure. Or you can go and farm, and then you know the season when you can farm and the season of the flood. But you know, let me conclude by also saying that, you see, the dam itself has also provided some sort of comfort to the people downstream, because flooding downstream has been perennial, which has been very frequent in the very past when the dam was not there. But now that the dam is there, that is controlled. Because the water which would have flooded, because this big water comes from all over and it comes to enter the sea. So as it gets into the sea, with whatever water comes every year, the place gets flooded because it's a bit flat. But now that we have the dam, the Akosombo and Pond Dam, it protects downstream from flooding. So these are some of the positive benefits of the dam. But of course, their livelihood, talking about their compensation, for instance, they think that they should have also been compensated when Akosombo was built, because their livelihood was impacted in a way, because what they used to do, or the sort of fishing they were doing before the dam was created, after the dam, they couldn't do that. I sort of agree with them. So we also recommended that, well, some level of that should be considered. And they've had the thinking that they should have been compensated ever since the Akosombo was built, way back in the 60s. So that has been the back of their mind. And that's why they think for now, they have to be taken care of, which we also agree with them.
And I do appreciate your thoughts on this.
Yes. And then people upstream, you know, some areas in the T region, up north, Savannah and Volta region, well, part of the Volta region, were also flooded. But then these people living in the areas within the 280 contours where they are not supposed to. But I've got VRA's inability to enforce together with the MCs and the various stakeholders, that people don't live within those areas, have also resulted in that. So if we cannot enforce and people are living there and they have been flooded, well, I think they also need some level of compensation. And then now going forward, some physical structure should be put there. And I know VRA said they are going to put bamboo to demarcate the 280 shoreline, so that nobody lives below that.
Okay.
So I think with all these assets upstream, plenty of mangroves downstream at the flood zones, this will help, so that should there be any flood in the future of a magnitude more than what we've seen in 2023, we should be able to spill and then handle it.
Right.
And then as I said, spillage is very important to safeguard the dam.
Indeed. And I do appreciate your thoughts on this. And I think good work done is in order, because you even submitted this report before the deadline of May 12. Congratulations to you and the team.
Thank you very much. And I think it's good. I have to thank my team, because we have to work day and night and make sure we finish on time. Because you may never know. We are already in April. Nobody knows what's going to happen this year.
Indeed.
So whatever recommendation, we have to start working on them quickly.
Indeed. And thank you.
April, May, we are in May.
You are in May,
June,
yes.
July, rainfall is going to start again. And of course, if we are able to come out with recommendations and we start looking at them seriously, we never be caught with our pants down.
Certainly. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And I wish you well.
You are very welcome. Thank you very much.
Kirk Coffie, Engineer Kirk Coffie is chairman of the 5-member investigative committee into this Akosombo Dam spillage. And Dennis, let's round up with the last few recommendations in that committee report.
Well, so by way of recommendations, the committee says that there should be a national resettlement and disaster plan fund. And that's the committee says that establishing such a permanent fund will support displaced persons and reconstruction efforts. They also recommend an improved early warning system, and that's, they say, would upgrade technical forecasting tools and also ensure clear public communication. They are also recommending mandatory disaster drills, and that's regular community-based drills that will ensure preparedness. This committee is also recommending legislative reforms by way of amending the NADMO Act to enhance disaster response powers and also to enact laws to comply with key agencies that include the VRA to act proactively. They are also recommending that a permanent resettlement plan be put in place so as to move beyond temporary shelters to planned communities with infrastructure. And then also they have a recommendation on environmental safeguards, which they say is to review and upgrade dam operation protocols to minimize future spill impact. So that's just a summary of what they've been saying by way of recommendations, Alfred.
Good stuff, Dennis. Thank you so much.